You just made Saylor say proof of reserves is a bad idea.
I know I probably will never have a chance to talk to Saylor again in my life. So
For sure, yeah.
I just raised my hand. He gives me the mic. The only question I could think of is, are you showing proof of reserve?
Does Strategy have any plans to publish their launching proof of reserves?
It's not a good idea. It's a bad idea.
He was adamant, no, we're never doing that. Rattled off for 10 minutes, but I found his answer a little odd, especially he said, put it into ChatGPT and it'll give you a 50-page essay on all the security risks. It's like, well, I'm asking you, you're the CEO. Like,
So what would you have said if you were him? What would you have done? What would you do as the CEO of MicroStrategy?
Hey guys! Scared me there.
who's he going for? He's not going for the hardcore Bitcoiners. I mean, he is in a sense, but he's going for TradFi.
Yeah.
That's his target audience. And TradFi, they're cool with the Big Four audit of assets and liabilities. They don't care about proof of reserves. And so,
Yeah, they don't even
maybe,
how very what that is.
within that context, I think it makes sense.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. So if you were the CEO of MicroStrategy, you would do the same thing as him. Is that what you're saying here? That's I'm trying to pin you down for
If I was
Q&A
CEO
here.
of MicroStrategy, I would continue to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah?
At a massive clip.
But you wouldn't have a proof of reserve policy, or you would?
No, I would.
You would.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have been in that situation.
Yeah.
We can kind of speculate on the real reason,
Yeah.
because I think Saylor's a smart enough guy. He understands the difference between public key cryptography and private key.
Yeah.
And we could speculate on the reasons. I mean, it could be the custody scattered across a bunch of different companies. It would just be kind of a headache. Some people are saying, oh, that's the strategic Bitcoin reserve is strategy. Because when you look at the timeline, Trump wins in November. December is when they really went ham on the ATM. I mean, people don't realize this. A year ago today, they had only 200,000 Bitcoin. Now they have over 500,000.
That's insane. We're here at Bitcoin 2025 Las Vegas with Mitchell Askew from Blockware Solutions, the 24-year-old who just broke Bitcoin Twitter by asking Michael Saylor about proof of reserves. Mitchell wrote The Conservative Case for Bitcoin and runs analysis at Blockware Intelligence. This kid isn't afraid to challenge anyone, even Bitcoin's biggest names. Welcome, brother.
That was a fantastic intro, Matty.
Well, you got some big shoes to fill. I just told you off camera that, I used to know Matt D'Souza back in the day who did a lot of the intelligence research, and he was such a cool fucking guy. And I was talking to Sam last night and just kind of saying, like, literally till the fucking 3 days before he passed, like we were talking shit, like negotiating, talking deals, like doing stuff.
Yeah.
And he didn't fucking tell anybody
Wow.
what was going on with him. So and then I was 3 days in, I was like, Matt's gone. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what? Matt's gone. What do you mean? So it was very fucking sad. But he was a brilliant fucking mind. So you have big shoes to fill. And I will say you have been doing a great job. I love your reports. You do a lot of great analysis. So
Thank
you have been filling those
I
shoes.
absolutely do. And thankfully I've had the chance to work under Sam and Mason for 3 years now. And
Yeah.
I never had the pleasure of meeting Matt, but I went back and watched a lot of his interviews, and he was a killer. He was
a fucking killer, man.
very smart dude.
Very smart, very intelligent.
It's unfortunate what happened to him, but I think
Life's not
we're
fair, man.
We're doing our best to carry on the legacy and make Blockware one of the most known names in Bitcoin.
I think he'd be proud of you guys. I really do. So let's dive in here. You just made Saylor say proof of reserves is a bad idea. What did you think when you heard that response? Like, where do you stand on everything?
It surprised me 100%.
You were surprised.
So I'll just provide some context on the whole situation. It was Monday, the day before the Bitcoin conference started. There was a side event, Bitcoin for corporations, and it was. I went in there. I'm looking around like, man, thethere's some heavy hitters in here.
They're passing out a lot of those cards. I picked one up.
It was a kind of a smaller event. They weren't live streaming or anything, and I was actually about to leave, and then I see Michael Saylor step up on stage. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna stick around for that.
Yeah.
and I was expecting to listen to him here. I'm gonna give the same old talk, whatever. But they start passing a microphone around, and the guy with the mic is 10 feet away from me. We make eye contact. I know I probably will never have a chance to talk to Saylor again in my life. So
For sure, yeah.
I just raised my hand. He gives me the mic. The only question I could think of is, are you showing proof of reserves? What's the plan there? Because I'm a strategy shareholder. I value
Same here, yeah.
I value transparency, right? I'm a Bitcoiner. I want to see it on chain.
Yeah.
Other companies have done that. Metaplanet does it. Bitwise does it. River does it.
Yeah.
And so to me, I didn't, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful or come at him or anything. Or some people out there saying I'm a spook planted by some hedge funds, a short strategy. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, so I asked him that. I expected kind of a stoic response, like, oh yeah, we're thinking about it. Well, we're working on it. It's, logistical complications. That would have made sense. But he was adamant, no, we're never doing that. Rattled off for 10 minutes. But he had two primary points as to why they're not going to do it. One of which I agree with. So he said, proof of reserves without audited liabilities doesn't give you enough insights as an investor to understand the solvency of the company.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. But the second was that it's a security risk to publish public Bitcoin addresses, which I don't necessarily agree with when you're a company. Like you and I, we wouldn't want to say, hey, this is my address, this is my Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because we don't want people to know how much Bitcoin
But
we
he's
have.
public companies.
Right. He's a public company. He's
Yeah.
already saying it. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And
Yeah.
so that part I don't understand. And
Do you think, I mean, with the amount of Bitcoin that MicroStrategy has, do you find any credibility to the argument that, like, the financial incentive to try to go after that would be just so fucking enormously huge that maybe he doesn't want anybody to know exactly what the custody procedure is? Maybe he doesn't want to expose, okay, well, it's all in one wallet, or it's all in 5 wallets or 10 wallets. You kind of get what I'm saying here?
I understand.
Obviously,
Totally.
it's not all in one wallet, but
well, from what I understand,
unless we'd see it. But
some of the chain analysis companies, around 80% of their stash is accounted for already. And, there's all these Satoshi wallets with a bunch of Bitcoin.
Yep.
So I don't necessarily see a security vulnerability there. And I mean, we can kind of speculate on the real reason, because I think Saylor's a smart enough guy. He understands the difference between public key cryptography and private key.
Yeah.
And we could speculate on the reasons. I mean, it could be the custody scattered across a bunch of different companies, and it would just be kind of a headache. Some people are saying, oh, that's the strategic Bitcoin reserve is strategy. Because when you look at the timeline, Trump wins in November. December is when they really went ham on the ATM. I mean, people don't realize this. A year ago today, they had only 200,000 Bitcoin. Now they have over 500,000.
That's insane.
They've accelerated very quickly. And so I think there's any number of potential reasons as to why they're not doing it. But I found his answer a little odd, especially he said, put it into ChatGPT and it'll give you a 50-page essay on all the security risks. It's like, well, I'm asking you, you're the CEO. Like, can you articulate some of those security risks for me? Again, no disrespect to him. I'm still holding strategy.
Same here,
I understand, the value proposition.
Thanks for taking our stock, bro.
Right.
Just kidding.
No, but I'm a huge fan of Saylor, and I'll continue to hold strategy.
Of course. Okay. Gotcha. So you weren't, personally concerned that there's, it's an issue.
No,
it's a major
I
issue
think
right
they have
now.
all the Bitcoin.
Yeah, you just think it's a bad decision for the ethos of Bitcoin and kind of like the response.
Precisely. And for more context, going into that question, he had just spent the previous question talking about the transparency of MicroStrategy and how
Gotcha.
when you're an investor, whether you want to short it, long it, sell vol, buy vol, you know that they're all in on Bitcoin and he's not going to change his tune, start selling Bitcoin and mess with your position. And so it adds to that transparency aspect.
Interesting. You once wrote that without Bitcoin, you'd have no hope of buying a house. I was lucky enough to buy my house years ago and like watch the money printing occur and the price go up crazy as assets inflated. And like, I have so many friends and, people my age that like for the first time in like America, it's almost like the first time in America, it's like our generation is worse off than the previous generation.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of that is downstream from the fiat money printer and how it drives wealth inequality and how it monetizes certain assets like property, right? As an example of like now property itself has a monetary premium because people know that if they hold fiat currency, they're going to lose purchasing power.
Right.
Most people feel that they can really they might not understand what's happening, but they can kind of feel it. And like, the, what's the right word I'm looking for here? The energy of people is kind of like directed at like, oh, get into real estate, dude. Like, but why? Like, why are we doing this stuff, right? They might not really fully understand why they're even doing it, but they can feel it, right?
Right.
It's a pretty dark statement to say, like, without Bitcoin, you have no hope of ever buying a house.
Yeah, well, honestly, it's ironic because now that I have Bitcoin, I don't really care to buy a house necessarily. It's like
that's funny.
From a purely financial sense, it actually I think it makes very little sense, especially for someone in my position.
Yeah,
because especially also where interest rates are at right now.
Yeah,
you can rent and get a higher quality living situation for far less on a monthly cost, as well as you don't have to put any capital up front. And so when you price real estate in terms of Bitcoin, it goes down continuously over and over. And if you're on the fiat standard, you're saving in dollars.
Yeah,
it's your hurdle rate to even get
that-
in the door,
yeah,
to
you're not
literally
wrong.
get a down payment on, it's crazy, like a single family, 1 bed, 3 bath home, and that's not super great, kind of old. It's going to be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 depending on where you're at. And so, if you want to even just go 10% down, a lot of Gen Z, they don't have 30K in savings. They don't even have 5K. They're
It's kind of scary,
neck
man.
and credit card debt and student loans and stuff. And so, by virtue of saving in Bitcoin for multiple years, you can actually get to a position where, hey, if you wanted to buy a house, you could.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You also said that money printing destroys the nuclear family. Unpack that for us.
Right. So one of the reasons, over half of divorces, period, are because of money problems. That's pretty well-known thing. Financial problems drive tension within a marriage. And a lot of people, there's studies that back this up, and you can just anecdotally ask any Gen Z or millennial who doesn't have a wife, who doesn't have children, why are you waiting? Well, a lot of them will say, I just don't feel ready financially. And because what you mentioned earlier, inflation, it disproportionately affects younger generations.
And the poorest people in general, right? It's like,
because
those who don't have assets
exactly
don't benefit.
Young
right?
people haven't had time to
people that are living paycheck to paycheck, they don't benefit, right? So it just exacerbates that as the cost of living for those necessities go up. For someone like myself, it doesn't really affect me at all if gas price fucking doubles. Doesn't really affect me.
Yeah.
But for people that are living paycheck, that's a fucking huge deal. Yeah. Right?
When you only have $100 of extra income after your bills and everything goes up 5% in a year, now all of a sudden you're having to borrow just to live. And so people are putting off having a family for many years into the future. I mean, you look back, women used to have their first kid in their early 20s, and now it's like early 30s. And so it's not a good situation. The nuclear family is the core of society. You don't want the state and the government raising your children. You want families raising your children.
Honestly, that's what society has become in a lot of ways. I mean, it's like I went to some public schools. You're literally in a government daycare. I'm thinking back, remembering, I had a blast, but I didn't fucking learn anything. I was fucking around the whole time. It's literally a fucking daycare. That's what it is.
Absolutely
government daycare.
You have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. What 5 to 17-year-old boy wants to be inside for 8 hours a day, sitting in a desk. I was an active kid. I would wiggle around in my chair.
I got in so much trouble. I was always a rebel. I'm like, this fucking sucks. I hate this.
They're saying, we got problems.
I'm not saying there weren't good teachers and stuff that I had, but the whole experience as a whole was just
exactly. The overall
government daycare.
Yeah, the overall structure is just poorly designed.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of anecdote I've had. A couple of my buddies are going into the teaching profession. And I live in North Carolina. It's egregious for teacher salaries. And so they barely can make enough to just live with roommates and everything.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it sounds terrible, but this could be ultimately good, because I think you're seeing a lot of, like you said, you had good teachers. I had good teachers, but I think you're seeing good people steer away from the teaching profession.
Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
Exactly.
The incentives are not great, right? So we were actually talking about this on one of our podcasts a couple weeks ago. It was how do we fix this situation? And I can't remember who we had. I can't remember who I was speaking to about it, but let's change the incentive structure. My idea was kind of okay, you get kids coming into your class, right? What did they look like before? What were their grades last year?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they were an F student, can you make them a fucking D or a C student, right? You don't have to make them an A student. You don't have to fucking fake their tests. But can you show improvement from your students, on average, and have some kind of qualitative metric that shows improvement, right? And let's attach a financial incentive to that, so that way the best teachers can be fucking very wealthy,
right?
If you're a fucking great teacher, you can make what a doctor makes, right? Because you kick ass.
Yeah, and the incentives are so perverse. They give more money to the schools that are doing poorly.
They're doing poorly. It's crazy.
It makes no sense. And then the cherry on top of all of that is a lot of these teachers, their retirement is in a pension fund that is now insolvent. Yeah, because they're all holding long-term treasuries that are not wrong.
Debased over time,
real term.
Yeah, Social Security is another example of that, right? At a larger scale.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about right now in the mining industry?
I'm excited about this Bitcoin bull market.
Yeah.
So
it's been a rough bear market for a long time, and it'd be nice to really see that fucking hash price jump a little bit.
Right. Yeah. 2022, obviously a grind. 2023, a grind. 2024, you had the halving, and we're now starting to see hash price get back in that 5 to 6 cent per terahash range. And so I think miners are going to make a killing over the next 12 months, because fundamentally it's you're balancing Bitcoin price with difficulty. Mm-hmm. So if you think Bitcoin price will increase faster than difficulty, you want to be a miner. And well, it's I don't know if you know this, Matty.
I know.
It's really hard to build data centers. It's really hard to build from scratch a giant data center and plug in
It's
a gajillion ASICs.
If price shoots up 100% over 3 months, you ain't putting 100% more fucking mining operations online in you know what I mean? So
exactly.
So yeah, I mean, like, you got to be in it ahead of time, ahead of this giant jump, and I think we're in the early stages of that. That's how it feels to me.
I 100% agree. I think over the next 12 months, we're going to see Bitcoin much, much higher than it is now.
Yeah.
And difficulty is not going to be able to keep up. Miners are going to continue to purchase Bitcoin at a discount every single day.
So let me ask you another question. How do you do your research reports? Like, what does your routine look like? Because I know you guys put a lot of work into it. I'm a weekly reader of the report. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to focus on big news events that happen in the markets are, those are worth mentioning, but sort of longer term underlying structure of liquidity for one, Bitcoin on-chain supply dynamics. So are long-term holders buying? Are they selling? What's on-chain activity looking like? What's the Federal Reserve doing? Are there any interesting data points that come out? What are some of the Bitcoin treasury companies doing? I try to take sort of an all-encompassing view and use data to provide the analysis. I don't want to speculate on intentions of Trump or Powell or Besson or any of these characters. Just look objectively at what they've said, what they've done, what the outcomes have been, and how the markets are reacting, because ultimately Bitcoin price is the canary in the coal mine. It's the beacon of truth. Yeah. Price is the result of what the market thinks of Bitcoin in this moment. And
you're not wrong.
For example, people are saying you've got all these bullish news events and Bitcoin is, not really as high as people thought it would be. Bitcoin's at 110,000 now. It's relatively, it's pretty much at an all-time high. Yeah. We're doing great. I have no doubts about that. I think Bitcoin's going to continue to go on a massive bull market the rest of this year.
I think you're probably right. I'm on board with that thesis.
Yes, sir.
Let me close it out here with a final question. Okay. You're Michael Saylor on that stage yesterday. You're the fucking CEO of MicroStrategy. Somebody asked you the question that you asked him. What would you say? What would your response be? What would you do if you were in his shoes?
I would have probably had a more prepared response. Yeah. I don't want to say he was unprepared because he talked for a long minute, and it's clearly he's thought about that. But I think he was unprepared in that situation because this was an event where everyone, for lack of a better term, that they loved him. Nobody was coming at him.
Nobody wants to come. Yeah. I mean,
it's like
he's not used to being asked a critical question.
Right. And it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think he should, I don't know, maybe someone's asked him before. I haven't seen it. It certainly didn't make the waves that it did this week. And so I think he needs to have a little more discussion about that and maybe not be so defensive about it. But again, I understand his predicament. I mean, 500,000 Bitcoin, that's a lot to keep track. I'm sure it's across multiple custodians, multiple wallets.
Hopefully it is. Yeah, that would be smart decisions. So.
Right. And so it's,
so what would you have said if you were him? What would you have done? What would you do as a CEO of MicroStrategy with your proof of reserve policy?
He probably did the right thing. Maybe that's what I would have done. Because who's he going for? He's not going for the hardcore Bitcoiners. I mean, he is in a sense, but he's going for TradFi.
Yeah.
That's his target audience. And TradFi, they're cool with the Big Four audit of assets and liabilities. They don't care about proof of reserves. And so
they don't even understand what that is.
Within that context, I think it makes sense.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. So if you were the CEO of MicroStrategy, you would do the same thing as him. Is that what you're saying here? I'm trying to pin you down for a Q&A here.
MicroStrategy, I would continue to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah?
At a massive clip.
But you wouldn't have a proof of reserve policy, or you would?
No, I would.
You would.
Sure.
So you wouldn't. You would basically say, hey, look, we are going to have a proof of reserve policy.
I guess I wouldn't have been in that situation because we would have had a proof of reserve.
That's what I'm asking here.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, fuck. It's been a pleasurable conversation, Mitch.
Thank you.
Nice to finally meet you in person. Yeah.